video, I will be playing against 4 different chessbots and I will explain my thinking process so you can copy this for your own games and so you know what to do to beat players from different rating levels. So we are going to start off playing against Nelson, which is 1300 rating. So in general, for 1300 and lower rated players, one of the most important things is to have very good tactical awareness. That means solving chess puzzles, recognizing patterns, and basically just try not to make any blunders. And if you just do that, most of the time you will win quite easily. Here, for the opening, I am just playing pawn d4, e4, and I just want to put my knights in the center, put my bishops in the center, and just castle. I'm not even gonna play any opening theory or nothing at all. I just want to put everything in the center, and that's my main plan. I do have to be a little bit careful because Nelson is being very aggressive, putting the queen here on h4, threatening to grab this pawn for free. So whenever your opponent makes a move, of course you always have to pause for a moment and think, why did they move this piece? Is there a specific reason? Are they now attacking something? Or also, were they defending something which is no longer defended? For example, this c7 pawn. And that's why I realized that he is now attacking my e4 pawn. One very common mistake would be to play the knight out, attack the queen, but you would actually just be losing a pawn in that variation. So I am going to just simply defend the pawn. You could also just have done this with the bishop here. I think both of those are very good options. Now, Nelson is trying to be super aggressive, which is common at this level as well. He's just trying to push. And if I just play, I'm looking for a bad move. If I just play this move, for example, he is just going to push. I will be forced to move my knight somewhere and then he will capture. So he is putting up some tricks, but they don't really work because, well, this pawn, as you can see, I can just take this for free. What piece should you capture with? I think both of those can be viable options. I am going to go with the bishop just because I haven't moved this bishop yet. And if I can, I want to avoid moving the same piece twice. You could think, well, maybe you take with the knight so you can go for this fork, but this is defendable. So that's why I am not going for that specifically. He is again moving the queen, which of course is not so good. You shouldn't develop your queen in the opening, and you also shouldn't be moving it back and forth for no reason. I have to watch out. He is attacking this. I don't see any problems, so we are just going to develop the knight. And now he pushes the pawn. Okay, doesn't really do anything either. And this game is a good example of what play is actually like at this level. As you can see, my opponent is playing moves and he's not giving away pieces, like he's not blundering queens, but at the same time he is blundering pawns right and left, and this one we can also take. He is now threatening to take here, but I can basically grab this pawn 2 different ways. Which is the best choice? Well, I think the best choice will probably be the knight, because otherwise I would be doubling my own pawns, which is not a big problem, but there's no reason to do it, so I'm not gonna do it. Knight here, h6, one of those moves, very common at the lower level, but the move actually doesn't do anything. I am checking everything. I don't see any problems for me personally. I don't think there is anything going on. All of my pieces are protected here, so I am just gonna castle. And that's just the main idea. You can see we have the 2 pawns in the center, we have developed pieces, so pretty much everything is going great. What you are gonna see is that as long as you just don't blunder any pieces yourself, your opponent is almost always gonna end up messing up and giving away material at some point. So I think that should be your main strategy. Try not to make mistakes and just wait for your opponent to make mistakes and just punish those mistakes. And then as soon as we are up material, we are gonna exchange into a winning endgame. So right here, he is developing the knight. He is also threatening to capture. So we do have to do some calculation. I mean, we can always grab the knight, but he can recapture with the pawn. We are doubling the pawns, but at the same time, we also have to move our bishop. Of course, we cannot take this because the queen would be recapturing. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to trade. Also, the material is slightly in our favor. We're up 2 pawns. So yeah, we could trade, but maybe we have a better move as well. I'm also looking at the fact that this c7 pawn is unprotected. And I'm not sure if there's a good way for black to defend this. For example, if we go in with the knight, we basically attack this and also this pawn. So I am thinking about this, which is a counter attack. I am allowing black to play, for example, takes here, but then he would be losing the queen, or they would have to move the queen. And then I still have the option what I am doing, I can do whatever I want, I mean, but at least the queen is gone. So the queen is no longer protecting c6. So I think that's a good move. Instead of just trading for no reason, which wouldn't have been the best thing, but also not the worst since we were already out material, but now at least it makes some sense to do this. Probably he will recapture, and then of course we can take with the bishop, and this is also a bishop fork, which is quite rare, but it does exist. Here we have the bishop fork. We can win this. If he takes that with the queen, of course he also gets forked by the knight. So as you can see, it's really not that difficult to play chess at this level. The most important thing is to just not blunder any pieces. Right now we are winning. Of course we are winning extremely hard because we have all of the material. We have 3 pawns in the center, but still you have to figure out a way to win as quickly as possible. Because we are up so much material, what I am going to do is I will activate my queen and I will see if I can start an attack. Because since my opponent has less material than I do, and it's a really big difference here, there's even an entire queen missing, that means usually if I start attacking, I will have a winning attack. So I'm going to look for checks most of the time, just see if I can do a check. I can also do this check, this is protected by the knight. I can now grab this bishop, and of course this is just going to be cleanup. I think I'm also going to go here, that's a very big threat as well. Okay, so he's trying to prevent me from going there, but I also have these pawns. So this is going to be a real easy game, just a little bit of cleanup work left. He's got to move the king, we can take this as well. At this level you also shouldn't be too worried about counterattacks, because since we are up so much material, it doesn't even really matter. We have to find a quick checkmate, maybe e6. And that's sometimes the difficult thing. You are winning, but what is the fastest checkmate? I'm not so sure. Something I would also sometimes do is, for example, play a variation like this, and then just sacrifice my queen for the rook. This is not the best way to play, but if you are up so much material, it honestly doesn't matter to do something like this, because you can basically just, grab a new queen and you're gonna easily win the game. And he even allows us to exchange, so yeah. This is gonna be easy. Let's see what we are gonna do. Let's say this. This check. But as I said, you have to try and find a checkmate. It doesn't really matter. Yep, we got it. So yeah, here we just have a checkmate. So that was it for Nelson. Not too difficult, and honestly, as I said, don't worry too much about openings. Just put your pieces in the center of the board. Try not to blunder any material, and you are literally gonna win most of your games at this level. Trust me, just work on your tactics and you will get there. It's time to face our second opponent, Isabel, which is a 1600 rated bot. So again, I'm gonna play my opening here, d4. And at this level, the 1600 level, openings are getting a little bit more important, because most players will have watched some videos on YouTube or will have done some study with the engine, and they will have some plan of what to do in the opening. So it's good if you are playing at this level to at least have an idea what you are trying to accomplish. I am going to play the Pegasus system, which is my favorite opening, my own opening that I invented. Developing the knight, so we have some control over this square. They played d5, so we can't push the pawn. We're going to play this. But I think for the 1600 level, it's important that before you go into a game, you know what opening you are going to play, and at least you know a little bit of theory, but not too much. At the end of the day, you can still just develop your pieces to the center and just think logically, and most of the time you are going to be fine. And Isabel is actually playing a good line, or at least she was playing a good line. That was one of the best ways to try and counter the Pegasus system. And then she plays Queen a5. So this is one of those things that I'm not really sure about. I have looked at this before, but this is such an uncommon line that I don't really know what to play against this. And that will also happen a lot at this level. Your opponent is going to deviate from your theory by playing a strange move, and then you have to figure out everything by yourself. In that case, the best thing to do is usually either stick to your normal moves or just try to play the most logical looking moves. So that's why I am just going to develop this knight. I'm gonna think about developing this bishop and also castling. In the Pegasus system, it's also very good to play this pawn to c4, have some counterattack going on in the center, and if they exchange, sometimes you can take with the knight, that's not possible here, or you can take with the bishop. And so now it's time to do some calculation. So she moved the bishop here. Of course, we're always looking at their moves as well. She is pinning this. She might go in with the knight as well to double up the pressure, and this knight is also pinned. So we do have to watch out that we don't run into any troubles. My most simple variation that I want to calculate first is just, can I do this? Because this is a strong opening for me. If she plays this, I'm not really worried because I can just castle. The thing I'm most worried about is what if she plays this? Because, I mean, there's double pressure here. I can't move both of my knights. So yeah, it's not a bad position, but it's also not super comfortable. So I'm not sure. I don't think I'm gonna go for this. I could move my queen. Moving my queen helps because it unpins the knight. Also, I get an attack here and I have extra pressure in the center. And moving the queen is one of the standard plans in the Pegasus system. Not in this particular position, but hey, we might play it. And now we have a very interesting line. Our opponent took our knight, and instead of just immediately recapturing, we are going to think a little bit. Because as you see, we also have the option to take here on b7, which attacks the rook and also the knight. And this is incredibly strong because both of those pieces are hanging. And I guess they have to move the rook. Of course, something like this doesn't work because we take this with a check. Also, they can't defend the knight because of this check. So I think, yeah, this move probably has to be played. And then we can grab the knight first. And later on, we can recapture the bishop. Not even with the knight, but with the pawn. And that was also why a couple of moves ago, I didn't really worry about this move and the fact that we wouldn't be able to recapture because of two reasons. One is that actually this is not a bad structure, taking with the g-pawn, and because we have all the control over the center and we can just develop, put the king here and put the rook here. But also because I have this counter attack. So queen takes b7, they move, I already calculated I can take this with check, they block, and I think it's time to just recapture this. We have a little bit of a strange structure, but we are fine. So now again is the point which you are going to get a lot of the time, and that is you are up material. So what do? We basically just want to simplify. We want to trade material if we can. Also, we have this pawn on c5, which is a little bit devious because I can already imagine if I move the queen, let's just say they do this, there are some lines where I might be able to push. But of course, they can also block the check with the rook, and then, yeah. We have to repeat moves. You might try something like this, but I don't think it's really going to work. So we have to find some kind of plan. One very normal looking move is also just queen here, basically inviting this exchange. I know we are dropping this pawn as well, but I don't think it really matters. So that's probably what I would play in an online game. Just winning some time because I can play a quick move. And also if we get an exchange of queens, since we are up material, that's going to simplify everything. So that is very important as well. Okay, time to find a new plan. They didn't exchange the queens, but I'm going to continue with this idea of pushing this pawn. I think this is very strong. They go here, and I think we might be able to just force a queen trade now with queen b7. And okay, I know I'm going to lose the pawn, but I honestly don't care about a pawn if I can exchange queens, since we are already up material. This pawn is also still hanging, but it's defended twice, so I don't have to worry. But still, yeah. We don't have to worry about much in this position. I think it's all fine. I'm not sure what's the best. I think keeping the pawns like this makes sense. I'm gonna go with the knight. You never know, we might be able to go for something here as well. We do have to worry a little bit about king safety. Not too much, but you can already see there might be some line where we get checked, and then the rook is here as well. So I'm just gonna play the bishop here, which prevents all of that. Now we can just develop this bishop and probably just castle and be safe. I'm playing a little bit quickly, but I am calculating. It's just that I see things very, very quickly. While I know for most of you, probably after every single move your opponent makes, you have to calculate. But I already knew by the way that I am playing, that all of these squares are in my control. And that's also something, most of the time when I play moves, I'm already thinking about future responses from my opponent and how I can prevent any problems. And if you just set up in the right way, for example here, I already knew if I take with the knight, it's going to be backwards defending basically this bishop. And I knew that I was going to be able to castle without having to worry about this rook. In a game, of course, you still do some calculation, but I don't see any problems. And black is inviting some trades, so we can just do some trades. That's good for us. And I think we might be thinking about exchanging rooks, but I do have to be a little bit careful that I don't get in a position where I blunder too many pawns, because if I give up too many pawns, yeah, my material advantage is going to become smaller and smaller, and then it might be more difficult to win. But I think it's still fine because we basically have this counter threat. It can kind of get a little bit complicated like this, but in the end we are still going to win back the pawn. So what was I calculating? The fact that I can play this, yeah. You could also move over the other rook, of course, if you don't want that specific line. One thing they can do maybe now is go here with the knight and then defend with the rook. But it's also a very defensive position. Plus, and that line, we would have actually had an amazing tactic. Let me show you. In this line, we actually have a pretty cool tactic. Not this line. This, and this. And the tactic we have here is knight b6. Knight b6, fork, and of course, if they take, we take this. So that would have been nice as well. Okay, so it's again cleanup time. We are up material, so I don't really worry about much. This is even the point where I pretty much almost stop calculating just because I am winning by so much that it doesn't matter. And since my opponent doesn't have that many pieces left, I also don't need to worry about the counter attack. I think I'm gonna go grab these pawns. This is like the last bit of resistance that my opponent has, and it's these pawns. So if I can eliminate those, yeah, they pretty much have nothing going on. Just have to make sure we don't blunder a knight somewhere. Okay, another exchange, I don't mind. This rook endgame is winning anyways. Let's do this, maybe this as well. Always make sure you don't get back rank mated, but I know that's not a problem since we have a little hole for the king, so we can just start swapping material. And of course, this should be an easy winnable endgame. I'm not going to play through this endgame. It's just going to add extra time to the video and it's not super valuable. But I hope you know how to win this if you are up a bishop and 3 extra pawns. Just got to make sure we don't blunder the bishop. And then we can just basically push this forever. And if they ever push, we just grab it. Pretty easy. So that's it for the game against Isabel. The main takeaway at the 1600 level is you have to prepare a little bit for the opening. You have to have a general plan, maybe memorize a couple of lines, not too much, but make sure you know what you are doing. It's not super important to have a really big strategical knowledge or positional knowledge because most of the time still your opponent is just going to make silly mistakes that you can punish. But I do think it's always worth to try and be the best chess player you can be and study things that you don't really need, like strategic or positional concepts, even though you are a bit lower rated, because they can still help you to come up with the right moves in any position. Okay, so next up we are gonna play against Wally. So we are playing against an 1800 rated player, and these are already pretty tough to beat sometimes, because if they have a good day, they could sometimes play at 2000 level. At this point, opening knowledge is getting more and more important. 1800 really is the point where I think it's worth it to really build an opening repertoire, start memorizing all of your lines, practice them with the engine, things like that. So I will be sticking to my opening principles. Also, an 1800 player is most of the time not gonna make any simple mistakes that you are just gonna grab extra material. So you are gonna have to use some positional chess knowledge as well, some strategic knowledge. If you are not sure what that means, you should definitely watch my videos. For example, the pawn structures guide, the middle game guide. Those are very good resources. So I am just gonna continue. This is a known line in the Pegasus system. I've played this many times before. I take the center. I make sure that I have a very solid center. They can't kick away my bishop. And this is my starting structure. I don't talk too much about the opening moves because this is not an opening lesson, of course. And also it depends on your particular opening. Here we do have a decision-making moment. I've actually played both variations. You can castle, so I'm gonna show you. You can castle in position like this and go for a line like that. But I never really like it if they attack me with the knight. In this case, since we have queen a4, this, and then d5, we would actually be winning the knight. But in general, I don't like that the knight can attack me. If they have the bishop, for example, here, it's not such a good line. Also, you can push, what was our line? This. You can push and force them to go back, which gains a little bit of space. We grab some extra squares in the enemy camp, but I also don't think this is too great if they just have an easy way to undermine your center. So it depends a bit what you like. This is going to be more of a closed game, more maneuvering, more strategy, and just allowing this to happen, which I am going to do in the game, is going to lead maybe to a little bit more of an open game. But Wally doesn't want to take this, so I'm just going to go ahead and push this. That's also sometimes something I do. I calculate something, I decide, okay, if I get the opportunity, I will play the open game and the attacking opportunity. But yeah, if they don't do anything spectacular and they just allow me to play this, it's fine either way. This is going to be a good example of how you can grab extra space. So how can we make a plan in this particular position? Well, we already developed these pieces. One big worry that I have currently is that I want to do something with this bishop. This bishop is not really doing much at the moment. Would be nice maybe if we could put it here and then put the queen behind it. But for that to happen, I would have to move my knight. And I also don't really want to move this knight because it's still doing something here. So I'm just going to leave my pieces here as they are. I think that's fine. So I'm going to think, what plan can I play? And you can see that my pawns are actually pointing here towards the queen side. And also some of my pieces, at least the squares they can still go to, are on the queen side. So I think since my position is aiming towards the queen side, that is where I am going to focus my play. Also, I'm always checking what is my opponent going to do. And I think actually they are going to try to pin this knight or maybe jump in. So I'm going to prevent this first. It's never a bad move, especially here, to play this because we already have all of our pieces developed. And that's why I'm going to play it. My opponent realizes they have to fight back for the center. So we are going to strengthen this because I want to keep my structure, of course. I want to keep my pawns like this. And I have already decided we are going to play on the queen side. So I want to start pushing here. The main question is, which push is the best? Are we going to play b3 or a4 or b4? Let me take a look. I think b4 is a little bit loose, if I can call it that, because this pawn is just weak. It's unprotected, and it might get punished. I don't see an immediate way for my opponent to punish this. Yeah, I don't see an immediate way for them to punish it. But still, I'm not too sure if this is really what I want to go for. For example, after they go in with the queen, I don't know. I don't like this too much, so I'm not going to go for this. I could go for a4, which is not bad. We are just grabbing some space. Or I could play b3. And I think b3 makes most sense because we are reinforcing this. And also we are solving this problem that we had with the bishop that we want to move. Black is playing a really high level move. This is something that I really enjoy. They realize that the bishop is dead on this diagonal because it will never do anything because the center is closed. Closed meaning our pawns are interlocked, as you can see. We can't move them. And they are on dark squares as well. So this dark squared bishop is really a trash bishop. But here they can at least try to trade it. So let's say I move my bishop. They can, for example, try to trade it. Or they can just keep it on this diagonal and they will at least have some infiltration into my position. So it's fine. I'm just going to play the bishop here and I'm just going to check what they are doing. Okay, bishop d7 makes a lot of sense. So again, I think we do know what our plan is going to be. We can't do anything in the center. We can't do anything on the king side. So we have to find some play on the queen side. So we are going to go for some expansion and see if we can do something. Maybe we can even push all the way and try to create some weakness in the enemy camp. If they take, of course, that's always going to be extremely good for us. Can I analyze this? Yep. If they take, yeah, that's pretty devastating because we can take with the rook. We can basically double up. We can put the other rook here as well and put a lot of pressure. So they can't do this. If you get to the point like here, you might think, well, why did you push your pawn so far? But you can see we actually stopped this from moving, and we also have some tension in the enemy camp, especially here, where we are controlling some squares as well. But we still have to find some type of plan. I do see that this pawn is weak, and I can attack this with my bishop. So that might be our first attempt to try and play for something here. Black finally decided to release the tension a little bit in the center and take. So now we have to make the choice. Are we going to take this back with one of the pawns, or are we going to take this with the bishop? Taking this doesn't make a lot of sense, since basically there are going to be troubles here at some point where black might be pushing. So I would like to keep this closed if I can. We can take with the pawn. I'm considering this because it basically just resets the structure we already have. It also resets this problem that black has to defend this, and I don't even think there's a good way of defending it. Maybe this, but still we can add more attackers as well. Or we might also just say that we are going to capture this immediately. But usually when you have a good threat like this, if there's no reason to immediately execute it, it's sometimes best to keep the threat and just wait a little bit, because you are going to still have a plan in the future, and the plan is not going to disappear, since my opponent has no easy way of defending this. So based on all that, I think it makes most sense to capture here with this pawn. They are playing the queen to protect this, but we can always add the extra attacker, and they have to go back. And you can see how the black position is really starting to fall apart. They are doing everything they can to protect this backwards pawn, and that's one of those problems with a pawn like that. This is very weak, and if we can build up the attack, black has to always defend this with his pieces, and in the end probably we are gonna win. And this particular line, we actually have a tactic, so if you want you can calculate it, but I'm gonna show you the solution. So white to play here wins material immediately, and the winning move is just to play knight takes e5. Or actually this knight takes e5. I don't think it matters, but I would do it with this knight because this one still has some role to play here. And of course, if they recapture, we can basically take this, and also this rook is pinned. And if they don't recapture, let's play this. If they don't recapture, well, we still have this. We still have this. This. So yeah, it's looking very great. My opponent is gonna collapse pretty soon. And you can see that this game is a little bit more tough than the previous games. My opponent is not immediately giving away bishops, giving away rooks, giving away queens, but they are sometimes giving away squares. They are allowing us to grab hold of squares, or they are creating weaknesses in their own position. And that's why I said at this point it really starts to become more about studying openings and really understanding the middle game ideas. And black here basically made a bunch of middle game mistakes, and that is why they will lose eventually. Still, we only are up one pawn. I know the evaluation bar is shouting that we are immediately winning, but I mean, in the end, it's still just one pawn. We are strategically and positionally winning, of course, yes, but the material, we still have to prove it somehow with more material gain as well. So my first thing that I'm thinking about here is, are there still some tricks going on? Because I could still capture this bishop, play this line, but I don't see a really big future here. Maybe we play e5, because of course if they take us that's devastating because of knight e5, but they also don't have to take. Yeah, but then we have an extra attacker on d6. So I think there might be something to say about maybe playing this and then going for a line like that. Or, as I said, maybe a line like this. So that looks interesting. One other thing I'm sometimes thinking about is there any way I can still force something to happen here? But I'm not sure. I mean, you could always capture and then your opponent captures here. And then maybe we can put more pressure with the other knight as well. We could then try to take a rook, but it's very complicated. And since I already see a pretty easy plan with knight takes d7, this is the plan I will go for. And then we are going to push e5. Yeah, I know they are grabbing this, but I don't really care because we can now grab this pawn as well. And this pawn is way more important than the one that we lost because we are influencing many squares into the enemy camp. And we are going to have some tricks as well. So black plays knight to c3. They are attacking our queen, so that is something we have to be a little bit careful about. So I think we just have to move the queen. There are a lot of squares we can go to, but I want to move the queen to the most active square where we're going to influence or attack as well. And I think that might be e1, so we can attack here. Also, f3 looks nice in some way, mainly because of this as well, but I don't see a lot going on immediately. And e1 also puts the pressure on the knight. So let's just say we put the queen here on e1. Okay, they play knight b5, and we still have to try and find a winning plan, but I think we have a pretty easy win. And the variation where we play this, we basically force the queen to move, and then we play d7. You might also think, yeah, you might also be thinking about other moves, but I don't see a lot going on. So I think we have a pretty easy plan. We're just going to force the promotion of this pawn, or at least force them to give away some material. I know they can take the bishop, but I don't really care about it because we are going to grab ourselves a second queen. And after they recapture, now we can play this. And now we are actually at the point that we do have such a big material advantage that we should be hardcore into trades. If we can do trades, that's all we want. So one of my first ideas is if I can just do this check. If they trade, that's fine. If they don't trade, we get an extra active bishop. And I also want to try and hunt down the king. Since we are up material, I want to be on the attacking side and be aggressive. You can take this with the pawn or with the knight. I don't think it really matters. We are going to play with the knight. And go for the attack. Can we just attack with the knight? I'm thinking if there's any immediate kill. But I think knight here looks very nice. One of my problems is that my rooks are actually pretty trash right now. I think maybe it's actually best if we just activate the rooks. Because when you are attacking, you are going to need a lot of attackers and you want to involve all of your pieces. And if we just keep a rook here on this a3 square, yeah, it's not really going to help us too much. You might also realize I'm playing a bit more quickly, but again, once we are up material, of course, you still have to be careful. But most of the moves that my opponent make are just not going to have any impact, and especially since my king is so safe. If my king was less safe, I would be calculating way more. But black is making things easy. They are even allowing us to go for this capture. So yeah, things looking very great. Just seeing if there is a quick way to win. And I actually think we might have a tactic where we sacrifice the knight and we push and we try to force a promotion. And even if they block us, we can always protect it. And basically the rook will be eliminated and stuck for the rest of the game. So I think that looks like a pretty decent plan. Rook d7 might also be good because it's basically the same idea. Yeah, now we can even follow up with the knight. I think I'm going to go with this. Playing rook to the 7th rank, always very strong. They can play this, of course, but I don't care. We're just going to do this. And I hope you can see a beautiful tactic here that we can play. It's not so hard to find, I think, and that's knight b6. Because if they take, we are promoting. Let me analyze that. If they take, we are pushing this, and the bishop can't do anything. So it's basically a free pawn. But now we do have to do something with this knight, or we can leave it one more move, but at some point we will have to move it. But I think it's pretty easy. We're just gonna try and grab this. We have a check. And I think we can even go all in crazy. Play things like this. You might think this looks insane, but at this point we're just gonna force a promotion. Doesn't even matter what my opponent plays. And try and find the quickest checkmate. What is the quickest checkmate? It's probably going to start with something like this. Activating the knight. And then seeing if we have something here. Knight e7 also possible. I do have to coordinate my queen and knight. And then this is going to be checkmate very, very soon. Well, we can do checkmate with the knight. We can do checkmate with the queen. So, Wally is defeated. What was my main takeaway from this game? You have to start spending some time on your openings. Still, you have to make sure you don't make any tactical mistakes. And also you have to study some middle game patterns and some pawn structures and positional IDs. If you don't know where to start, you can also watch my videos on those. 2000 rating basically means you do need a very solid opening, because without an opening you are gonna get in trouble pretty soon here. Also, simple tactical mistakes probably not gonna happen. Maybe some complicated ones, yes, but simple ones, nope. So it's gonna be all about opening prep and also, of course, strategical and positional knowledge. I am gonna be playing my Pegasus system again, my trusty opening. Capablanca variation, actually something that you don't see too much. This bishop to g4. But yeah, it's fine. They can play this if they want. My plan is just to put the pawn on f3 and then we're going to support here on e4. So Capablanca variation of the Pegasus, not something you see every single day. But yeah, it's not the worst position for black. But she's playing a bit of a strange move order here with the knight on c6. So I'm not too sure if this is actually in my my opening repertoire. This might be in the repertoire, but it's not a line that I memorize quite frequently, because you almost never see this. So it's time to do some thinking. I basically forgot if there is any prep here. But of course I do know the basic IDs, which is the most important when you want to study an opening. So I still, since I basically don't have a lot of prep left here, I want to develop my pieces. But one of the things I know in this position is that since we can't develop our knight and we don't have a good square for our bishop, you really have to think about every single square, because otherwise you might get in trouble. For example, if you just think I'm gonna play something like c3, yeah, you can also see the evaluation bar dropping. I'm not sure what the response is for black, but there has to be something here. So we have to do some thinking, because my opponent basically surprised me here with this strange move order. So she is attacking this, so I could just defend it, but then I am in trouble with my bishop, so I don't think that's a good plan. There is also not really any other way to defend this, or I would have to play my knight here to b3, but usually you don't want to put your knight on b3 in the Pegasus, because you're just going to get hit with a5, a4. So my conclusion is that I don't really have a good way to defend this pawn. So I might just leave it at that for now and see if I can do a counterattack. One of the only really good counterattacks here is to play pawn to e5, because we are going to be attacking this knight and we have the pawn on f3 grabbing those two squares. So yeah, the knight doesn't have that many options. I think it might even be forced to go all the way back here to g8. So we can play this pretty confidently, knowing that it's not going to be a bad move. And now we can see if we can fix this. So again, I'm thinking knight e2, but I'm not too sure. It's going to block in my bishop. Knight b3, I don't think it's good because of this line. So I might just have to play this. And now we have a really solid pawn chain. Pawn chain meaning all of these pawns are connected. And you can see that they are influencing a bunch of squares on the queen side. So basically this entire queen side is now under our control, and black can't do much on that side of the board. And we can be happy because now we finally can develop our pieces. How are we going to develop? Well, this bishop is stuck and I want to develop this. I'm not going to play this, it will lock in my bishop, but I can finally move my bishop, and then I can always move my knight on the next move. Black is trying to be aggressive and go for a counterattack, which is not a bad thing, especially at 2000 level. Players are aggressive, they try to win the game if you allow them, if you play too passively. So I do have to do some thinking, because this pawn here is under attack. I have to defend it or I have to push it. In general, I'm not a big fan of pushing pawns, because if you push a pawn and it's not a good move, you can never fix that. Your pawn structure is damaged forever. If you move a piece and then in the end you say, maybe it's not a good move, you can always move somewhere else. So if there is another way that doesn't involve pushing the pawn, I won't push it. So I think a pretty simple plan is just queen e2, and then this protects it. Does create a little bit of a problem because I wanted to put my knight here, but I might just be able to put my knight here on h3 and also attack the queen. Looks very solid as well. Plus, I think you might have already seen that there are going to be some tricks. If we ever move this knight, we are going to have a discovery on the queen. So moves like that are particularly interesting to calculate, especially since this is not a possible square for the queen. This is also not a square, This entire diagonal is also in our control. This is also in our control. So if we move the knight, I'm not sure where, maybe here. Yeah, the queen basically has to go to one of those squares, but probably it's just gonna give a check, and we don't really gain anything from that. So I don't think it's worth pushing this, moving this knight right now. We might just castle for now, I think. That also solves the problem with the check on the diagonal, and in general, since I want to make a bit of a waiting move, I don't think it's a bad plan. My opponent is playing this, and I still am looking at this idea with the knight b3, with the big advantage now that this doesn't come with a check anymore. So I don't really fear this. It's basically just a free move. I can move my knight, and then I can also move my bishop. So yeah, I think it looks fine. It's not super amazing, but we basically just get a free move. And then I can develop this bishop. Where am I going to develop it? Well, not here. That would be a free bishop. Not here, because that would be taking away a square from my knight. So basically it's one of those squares, but I think this is the most flexible option and also one of the more common options. One thing that I am thinking about is that I am taking away a square from this knight, so I always have to be careful in case they push. For example here, let's say they push. But of course you can also just do the counter push and lock up these pawns, and then your knight can be safe on b3. But my opponent is playing something very, very strange. They are playing pawn to f6, which in one sense you understand why they do this, because they want to have more pressure on the center and maybe, yeah, destabilize my position. But at the same time, it's also moving pawns near the king, and especially this f-pawn, not really a pawn you want to move without any reason. I can do two things. I can protect this, or I can take, but I think if I take, I basically help black to develop. Whatever they do, I am helping them to develop. If I do this, I am just supporting my own center. They can play this, they are basically wasting a little bit of time, and we have an amazing structure. If you look at this, all of those squares are our squares, plus we even have our bishop, knight, and pawn working together here for this particular square. So really good position, but we still have to find something that we can do in this line to actually win the game, because the material is still equal, even though of course white is better. White has more space, we have a better center, we have better developed pieces. Yeah, basically everything up to this point, maybe even partially up to this point, is in our control. So black is basically very, very passive playing on those ranks, and they also have a little bit of queenside space as well. So time to find a plan, basically. So how do you come up with a plan in a middle game like this? Well, one of the first things I do is I look at the pawn structure, because oftentimes the pawns will also aim at the direction you have to play. So right now, these pawns are aiming here, and that's telling me that there might be something going on here on the king side. So for example, a move like knight g5 might be playable. Even if they take, I can always take back, and if they don't take, I might be able to reroute, attack the queen, and that would improve my knight. So doesn't look like a bad plan, but also it doesn't look like the best plan in my opinion. Also, as you can see, we already know we have a lot of influence over the queen side, over the center as well, but yeah, there's not much we can do in the center because we can't do a single pawn push in the center. So I am looking if there's something I can do on the queen side here. A4 makes sense because anyways I want to stop a5, a4, so this would be a bit of a waiting move. I could also think about something like c4, trying to strike in the center, but I currently like this structure that we have going on, so I'm not going to change it. I am just going to play pawn to a4, somewhat of a waiting move, but we also grab some extra space here on the queen side. Black is proposing a trade of queens. My opinion on this is that in general, if you are not up any material, most of the time it's worth not exchanging queens. Exchanging queens will make everything more drawish. The only thing you might think of here is that we do force them into a bit of an awkward structure with the pawns, but yeah, might be defendable for them, and this also doesn't work. And in the end, they basically still have a solid structure. So exchanging queens, I don't know. I don't think it's what I would do. Probably I would just move my queen, or maybe block with the rook. And actually I think blocking with the rook, it's a bit of an exotic move, but it might not be a bad move, because we would be able to infiltrate on the king side, and we can also double up. So I didn't think about this at first, but it looks interesting. Yeah, it looks very interesting. And my opponent going crazy, castling on the queen side. So now we have an opposite side castling position, which basically means we have to put all our efforts immediately on attacking the queen side, and my opponent has to put all of their efforts on attacking on the king side. But that's not going to be easy, because this is already locked up, and I don't think they will have an easy time. So castling queen side was a pretty bad decision by my opponent. So yeah, my initial plan that I had, I'm going to attack here. It's still possible, but it's probably going to lead to an exchange of queens. And again, I already said I don't want a queen exchange. I could play knight here. It's a free move. So it's not a bad move, but also doesn't accomplish too much. And I'm thinking if there's anything going on the queen side, but I don't really see anything. I might sacrifice the bishop for 2 pawns and open up the king. Yeah, that might not be a bad plan, but I don't see the continuation. For example, this. And then I don't see what I have to do. Like, you can activate this knight, but they are going to trade it. You can activate the knight here, but they're also going to trade it. And in the end, you don't have much. I know the eval bar apparently thinks this is fine, but I don't see it. So I'm going to play another waiting move. Just play this. Let them move. Okay, so we have to think. I don't see much. The center is blocked. We're not going to play on the king side. We basically want to play on the queen side. But I don't really see an immediate way. I might have to move my knight so I can open this up, or I have to go for this anyways. This depends a bit on your playstyle, I think. Do you want to sacrifice this bishop? If you are an aggressive and attacking player, you're probably going to play this immediately. I personally like playing things only when I have calculated them, so we are going to do some calculation. I'm going to do it with the analysis because that's easier for you to follow. So my calculation is, of course, we already have this line. But then the idea is, can I activate my knight? Okay, I know they're probably going to capture it. But the question really is, can I do something then? For example, here with the pawn pushes. And black doesn't have much. Like, they basically almost have nothing going on. And my plan was, can I push here? Apparently there's something better. I'm not sure what, but my idea is, can I push here? I don't see any good play for black. Maybe they try to counterattack this, but I'm not even sure. Yeah, maybe they try to counterattack this. We attack them. Oh, and this is apparently very, very bad. So, because we are trapping our own queen. Okay. I don't know if I would be able to calculate that far in a game, but honestly, the engine says this is the best move. Well, the evaluation bar says it's the best move. But I'm not going to play it because I can't calculate far enough, and I'm not the aggressive attacking player. If you are, I wouldn't say it's bad to play this. So we have to find a different plan. My other plan was to move my knight first, and then, for example, let's say we move the knight, and then we start an attack on the queen side. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and it's not a bad idea because this also shows you that you don't have to be afraid of moving your pieces if you can start an attack. So yep, I'm gonna go for this. Maybe the best option for black is even to sacrifice to stop our pawns, but we are just gonna push. And we are gonna gain a lot of space here on this side of the board. I am gonna play c4 probably. I don't really like the fact that we're gonna open up the center so much, but I have to start creating attacking opportunities, and if I don't do anything, I'm gonna be in trouble anyways. I could also move back my knight, which wouldn't be so bad because we attack this pawn. Yeah, maybe that's the best move to play first. And I'm still looking at this c4 push. The c4 push is really what's going to liberate the position. But the thing is, if I played c4 earlier, I hope you calculated this, that in some line this rook might just enter the position. And now we are protecting this, so we can try to open up something. And in general here, what I would do is push. You want to push because I don't want to start exchanging in the center. I want to start exchanging here. I want to create something here on the king side. c6, you could play this, but at the same time, I hope you realize that if we play c6, basically we are closing the entire position. I mean, the king can go somewhere, and everything is closed, and then we are probably closer to a drawish line, except if there is some crazy sacrifice, which might be the case. Not too sure. So I would rather probably try to trade, but we also have to be careful. If we trade, we're always giving away this to black as well. But yeah, I think it's fine since we have more pieces working together on this side of the board. So I'm gonna trade here. C6, again, not a bad move, but not really my style of move. I'm gonna try and activate my pieces like this. Bishop, strange move. I think we can just move to the light square. And then we can exchange. And the reason I'm playing this a bit quickly is just that it makes a lot of sense to do this because we want to play aggressively on this side of the board. But I still don't see much. I think we might have to sacrifice something again. Here it's a little bit more clear, even without calculation, that it's not such a bad thing. Because basically we get 2 pawns that we can start pushing. There are almost no pieces here. And also this opens up attacks for our queen. So I think that makes more sense. And I would probably play this, even though I'm not an aggressive player. Especially since this allows me to activate my queen into the attack. And then also we can get this with a check. So this has to be a good plan. Still, we have to be careful. Our knight is under attack, but I think we can do some infiltration tactics with the queen. Always be careful for your own king safety as well, but yeah, we still have some protectors here, so we don't have any problems. And I can take this. Okay, so there should be a checkmate here, I think. If you see the king here all the way being lonely next to these pawns, there should be a checkmate. Maybe we start with this move, but then the king starts running into our camp. I'm not so sure. It looks a bit strange. Is there anything else? I don't know. We would have to find a way that we can make sure the king doesn't go here, but I don't think we can do that. So I'm just going to go for this check. Also, we can just... Oh, no, we can't. I was going to say we can just win material, but we would be giving away a queen. So yeah, I don't see it immediately. Maybe we move the bishop so that we can activate the rook. Might be something. Might be good. King here, we can give this check. This should be checkmate very soon. Oh, they can take this. I thought they had to block with the bishop. They can take this as well. But we have a checkmate, queen c3. So yeah, that was it. That was our game against Lee. As you can see, the 2000 level, this is already way more complicated. Main thing here is have a very good opening repertoire. I was able to play this partially because of opening prep, even though it was a line I was not too familiar with. And then also this strategic and positional play. Here I was mainly thinking about grabbing space, playing save moves as well, waiting moves, slow improving moves. And then the moment my opponent castled queenside, I knew, nah, that can't be good, I have to punish this. And I found the winning plan. That's it, I hope you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye!